So this is the Spooky edition. I actually kind of did things a bit differently, primarily because I saw a presentation by, I believe it's Jacob Thornton, one of the Bootstrap people, and I saw one of their talks on open source, and they drew their slides. So I thought that was kind of funny. I thought it was interesting. So I went ahead and did this. So over the time frame of a couple of hours. It takes a lot longer to build out slides when you're drawing them in Photoshop. So yeah, that's what I did. And then yeah, it's October, so it's a spooky spooky month. So a bit about me. I co-organized the Austin Automation Professionals. It's a meetup. I've been doing this since 2017. I think we only missed 1 month, but we do it once a month right now. We've had book clubs in the past, and things were a bit easier prior to the pandemic doing meetups, but we do them online now, so as well as conferences. So here we are. Love animals. I collect super old Magic cards. So it's one of the things that I do. I love computers, music, Undertale fans, books, and then spending time with loved ones, definitely. So just getting right into it. Just some context. Diving right in there. Just within our small organization. So we are SRE, but we also build and own the infrastructure. So, I mean, this differs per organization. I mean, there's some, each title and every organization is different, right? A lot of people can just, require that they need SREs now, as opposed to like platform engineers or DevOps or, whatever it might be. But yeah, we are SREs, but we build infrastructure, we maintain applications, we write scripts. So we're doing a lot, and I would have to say primarily that's because we're a small company. We're definitely a bit busy. So that's just a bit of context there. Based on what I'm talking about, it's not going to be all SLOs, SLIs, and SLAs, and this sort of thing. So I was previously responsible for testing, actually introducing automated tests to the organization. A lot of fun. So specifically Python, PyTest, and Selenium. So this is what I did previously. So last year I did a talk at this conference on more so on testing, but just kind of like, learning through communities type of deal, and kind of like taking that and bringing it back to organization and further learning. But yeah, shout out to Selenium Guidebook by Dave Hefner. This book allowed me to easily implement debug for my team, more easily, I should say. And then, of course, with the topic of Selenium with Python, definitely shout out to Selenium Base. I really wish this was around back when I was doing this, because we had to build out the test suite around PyTest and everything else. It just makes all of this so much easier, so much easier to contribute back to this project, because it's fantastic. Just diving right into it. I really like, and really what each of this is kind of what I've been working on for the past year, because I've kind of switched from testing. Well, I have switched from testing to operations. We kind of worked with operations a bit in the past, in the test organization. We wrote the tests, and then we were also the ones to go in there and add them to our CI/CD pipelines. So, over the past maybe like 2 years or so, we've had an understanding of how these things work to some extent. But this really just kind of, our previous DevOps, senior DevOps left for Apple. So it's kind of, added to this, to this organization. And it's been a lot of learning. And, what I'm doing here is, for anyone not familiar with SRE or ops or any of that, just kind of sharing what I learned over the past year. And I'm still learning, like, a lot each day. It's a lot, but it's also a lot of fun. So yeah, just getting right into it, just the context-driven approach to making decisions. I loved, just this context-driven testing, learning from all these people like Bert Petticourt and Container and all these people, and just learning from, what they had to say about, what makes a test, how there's no best practice, these kinds of things. So I don't know, I just always thought it's kind of interesting. So I really wanted to apply that to, kind of what we're doing to infrastructure. And, some of this might be, common sense for some people. They're like, oh, sure, we've been doing that forever. But, for how we're doing it, I guess, it's making sense for how we're approaching infrastructure and operations. So I guess one of those things is like, do we even need new instances? So, maybe you've looked into managed services, instead of adding more infrastructure to maintain. So that's one of the things that I'm doing now. We're a small team, so I'm trying to take more of a context-driven approach to this, as opposed to just, nodding my head and building out the infrastructure. I want to know if there's a managed service. Specifically, I can talk about it. So, I'm currently working with Vault and Graylog and previously Red Hat MQ, and we're on AWS. We do have some services on GCP as well. But the thing that I look at is, can I get this managed so that I can go in there and just set up integrations and work with the various teams of integrating this, as opposed to standing this up ourselves. So big time saver. That's just one of the things that I've been trying to do a lot. It's like, I consider that part of my job now. Do we, one of the things is like, I look at it, do we really need this? For me, ultimately, it's like on me, am I going to get woken up in the middle of the night, et cetera. So there's a lot. There's a lot more to unravel there with costs and all of that. And that's some of the stuff that I do as well. But that's something to look at. If you're in tests and you're throwing it into ops now, like, consider that a thing. Always look at that. The other piece here is, you don't have to use Terraform because everyone else is. I know it's like ridiculous, but other options exist, such as Flaky and CloudFormation. A buddy of mine messaged me the other day on Slack from meetup, and they're like, have you heard of Flaky? And I'm like, oh yeah, you can write your infrastructure in the language of your choice, essentially. So really cool stuff. There's a lot of really cool options. And for AWS folks, there's CloudFormation. And right now, we use a bit of each. If there's a CloudFormation template that exists, an example there would be for Vault, because, right now there's really no Vault as a service, so really, but there was some CloudFormation templates available. We modified them a bit ourselves, reviewed them, of course, deeply, and implemented them. I didn't really see a major issue with that, so we have the context of that. It was there. We used it. It saved us a lot of time as opposed to building out projects for months. So that's something to keep in mind. And then, of course, just because you heard about something on Twitter doesn't mean you need to immediately implement it. So with that, I think more so I hear a lot about Rustlang, really cool. But, it's just something that we don't need to immediately implement, with what we're working on at the moment. And that goes with CLI tooling as well. But, every choice is different. And there's so much information out there, in every space, but especially right now, just in the ops and cloud native specifically, there's a lot going on. So much so, just check out the cloud native landscape. It's pretty wild. Try not to get wrapped up in each of these. Try to take, that context-driven mind approach to these things. Here we go, into the slides. It's interesting. I just remember, in the test space, there's just so many hats. For me, it was one of those things that was always the case, just because I've always worked at small organizations. So I guess here, really is from an op, when you're in ops, it's testing that security as well. So just thinking about testing it as opposed to just building something and kind of, deploying it or something like that. So I guess here, this is something that was over my head at the time. So this bashing host that we needed, basically just connecting to, really super secure set of instances. What ended up happening here is we deployed it, and there wasn't a restricted IP range on that bashing host. So, these are just things to keep in mind, and really how to test that. And some of the things here could be, using tools for that, such as Nmap, scanning reports and figuring out what's actually accessible, and then digging in even further. What can you do with those ports? What information can you get? So, what it comes down to is, use the right automated tools to test this for you. I know there's that aspect of, there is still a manual approach to this, because as an individual, you're going in there and you are doing these tests. I mean, this is, like I said, once again, small to medium-sized organizations. Larger companies, they have security teams for this. Sometimes maybe you're not going to be involved with this process, but really don't lose sight of it. You know, maybe this is something you should think about as well. So that's one of the pieces here, and especially for Kubernetes clusters. I mean, it's a big deal. You know, just because it's a managed Kubernetes cluster. You know, whether it's Google Kubernetes Engine or Elastic Kubernetes Service, AWS EKS, or Azure's, you know, whatever. What it comes down to is just understanding that, you know, something can totally be not secure, even if it's managed by a big name, just by default, you know. It's one of those things. It's one of those things that we found out as well. Me especially, I deployed a cluster in GKE, and just, you know, after the fact, you find out there's all sorts of issues internally with zero trust networks and, you know, all of these things. And everything that I'm talking about, I'm going to be adding additional resources in this GitHub repo. So I'm going to create a GitHub repo for this. For these slides, and that will be resources. So if there's something you haven't heard of, or if you don't understand, it will be there. Or just reach out to me too, and we can talk about it. So that's just some pieces there. Scrolling down a bit further. So hopefully you can see this cool hat. That's cool, which hat that I drew. Yeah, so here is eliminating risk aversion, and this is just at the inception of the project. This is something that I would have to say, you know, happened, I wouldn't say fairly recently, but just kind of, you know, when I was responsible for building out something. And, you know, what I really mean here is, you know, when you're building infrastructure, you know, and something's deployed and it's there and it's nice and it works, wow, it becomes so challenging to experiment with that. I know, like, you know, as testers, you know, you break things. That's you know what you do. And that's what I did. And with some production infrastructure, it's really scary. It's like really scary stuff. You know, basically just experiment with the brittle setup sooner rather than later. There's that piece. Avoid the fear of making big changes later on, or try to. If you do, you know, there's separate environments for that, or there should be, depending on how you think about that. A lot of people, some people want to test in production, others don't. I just want to play it safe and try and do good work. That's kind of my perception of that. And then attempt to introduce chaos engineering earlier in the project. This is something that I talk about a little bit later, but yeah, it just comes down to, you know, maybe you have something that's highly available. Okay, maybe that's a CloudFormation script that you found, or maybe that's one that you're currently working on, a Terraform script that you're currently working on. There's multiple instances. I would definitely go in there, and as opposed to just deploying it and thinking it, and definitely giving the impression that it might be highly available, turn off some instances, you know, in those availability zones. See what happens. You know, curl that URL, see if you can still get data, see if there's interruptions. You know, there's just a lot of that I've been doing lately. So this is a fairly big one, and this definitely relates to you know, the issue of I guess flaky tests. You know, this is a big problem that we had for a while. You know, so really it's, you know, avoid flaky tests and avoid unnecessary alerting. One of the things there that we noticed was, you know, we would on the test side, we would, you know, come into the office in the morning and just notice that there's just, you know, always tests that were failing. So what we ended up doing, I mean, there's, once again, of course, an issue of like this manual, you know, the automated team was involved with some manual process, right? So like we're going in there and reviewing tests. There's a really cool talk. It was like 2016 Selenium conference. Brett Petticord did a talk on, you know, just really like adding this manual processes to automated teams and stuff like that. And, you know, one of the takeaways that I got from that was we just, if a test consistently failed, and I know this is like kind of more known now, but, you know, we just deleted it. So that was one of the things. We just wanted to delete it. You know, we weren't writing tests for the sake of writing tests. We were writing them for, to prove out a business use case. Often we didn't have thousands and thousands and thousands of tests. I know each organization is different once again, but in our circumstance, we looked at business critical tests. So yeah, if there were ones that were constantly failing, of course we would review it and make sure it actually meant what it was conveying. But yeah, we believe it. So that's just one thing to keep in mind here. So getting into it, the same thing would apply to alerting. And that's one of the takeaways that I got from testing was, we had, when I was brought onto the ops team, we had a ton, we do have some still, but we had a ton of alerts. And, with these alerts, there just were so many, and it was noise. It just essentially ended up becoming noise. We have Slack channels with these alerts and, PagerDuty and, now Ops Genie. But yeah, the point is, the team just starts to ignore these. So as a result of that, we just had to go in there and just start reviewing each alert and what it actually meant to us and what it meant to the business. Did it mean anything or not? So, that was just one of the things there. Just don't be afraid to just go in there and just start deleting things when it comes to alerting, but with precaution. I reviewed each one. So yeah, there's also the piece that, there's too many bad dashboards are a bad idea. Yeah, that was one of the takeaways that I got from, various companies just having so many dashboards throughout their office. I've been to a lot of organizations because, with the meetup, I was fortunate to be able to host the meetup at different locations and stuff like that. So, I always talk to the team about what they're working on and, all these things. And, the first thing you'd look up and you'd see just a lot of dashboards, particularly in like the ops side or the network operations center, or, whatever you want to call it. I mean, really what it came down to is I think I read this recently, but yeah, it's like from Charity Majors automated it. They should post about war rooms. And I thought those are really, really cool blog posts. And yeah, just essentially and that's what I'm trying to do now. And the team that I'm working with is automating this so that, nobody has to look at a screen all day. Of course, there is some core metrics and whatnot. We'll still have a dashboard for that, but we don't need a dashboard for every ops piece that we're working on. There's a book called Practical Monitoring. I'll definitely link that again. And one of the main, a lot of takeaways, but the huge takeaway for me from that book when I read it last year was just the alerts should be actionable. I really, and this is once again, just at least for my team, because when I see an alert, I want to do something with it. I don't want to just, sit there and not do anything with it and just, it's there. It's just essentially creating, a lot of Slack noise for me and my team. So with that, most of us, we don't need to know that the CPU spiked to 50%, on one of the worker nodes. So with that, check your thresholds of how you're actually alerting as well, at least on the infrastructure piece. With APM and application performance monitoring, stuff like that, that varies per team. There could be some really good thresholds to alert on and whatnot, but then I would look into dynamic thresholds. That's what we're trying to do as well. Shift a lot of those up for the applications as well, not just the infrastructure. So yeah. And with all of that, I noticed, just avoiding the idea of adding toil to automated processes. So if there's an alert, ideally you want to review it, but you want to review it with intent and actually make that actionable. So that's just really one of the big things that I got from testing, but also which I took with me for all the ops stuff. Scrolling along. A little nightmare before Christmas. So testing infrastructure as code. Really what, just, and then just a high level, the infrastructure as code pieces. really just a way to describe your, what your infrastructure is as code, whether that's managed service like GKE, for example, or that's just instances in AWS. Really, it can be described as code, whether that's Terraform, Pulumi, CloudFormation, or whatever your cloud provider offers there. And then the good thing is it's repeatable, and it's self-documenting in some sense. So there's infrastructure code is pretty cool. If you're not familiar with it, definitely check it out. It's really, really cool stuff. So really, like, testing infrastructure as code, like, almost kind of beyond some of the things that I've read about. I have used different accounts, varying accounts. I know AWS doesn't have this concept, but I know in Google Cloud I was creating a new project, like test projects, even outside of like dev staging production, and then creating a service worker, and then using that to deploy the infrastructure as code. At the time, it was through Terraform for Google Kubernetes engine, and with that, I would pretty much be sure not to destroy anything. I mean, there is something to say for just reading the infrastructure as code as well, just reading your Terraform, reading your CloudFormation template, whatever you're writing. But really, like, I think one of the big things that kind of gave me a little bit more peace of mind, and like a lot of horror stories that I've read about, was just testing it against another account in AWS. Like I said, I know they don't have the concept of projects like Google Cloud does, but what I did with AWS was, create a test AWS account. So that's what I did to kind of address that. And I would, deploy some test infrastructure there. Once again, an example of that was like, HashiCorp Vault Stack. So I had a separate AWS account, and really, like, just to give me peace of mind, just so I wasn't crossing over anything in the VPC, in the production VPC particularly, I would do that. I would deploy the infrastructure there, and I would test out permissions and do all sorts of fun stuff. Because it, like I said, it's just one of those things that just really gave me peace of mind, as opposed to just like, kind of deploying and being like, hey, whatever happens, happens. Didn't want to do that. So I don't know, maybe that can help you. Maybe there's a better way. If there is, let me know. I'd love to hear about it. That'd be awesome. But that's just one of the things that I've been doing personally, my team. And then on the AWS side, some of the things that I've been doing with CloudFormation, especially templates. I ideally, like, I don't want to run a bash script. Even CloudFormation to some extent, or Terraform, or YAML that I find on the internet. So with CloudFormation templates, I want to check it out in diagram mode first. An example of that was like, it was like HashiCorp Vault Quick Start, their AWS Quick Start. So prior to deploying it and just calling it a day, well, yeah, but I would go into the diagram mode and check out to see what was actually being created. They have this awesome visualizer. They take your CloudFormation scripts, and then they visualize it, which I think is fantastic. I honestly thought that was really cool. So yeah, I review that, and that's something. Maybe that's a gotcha for some people. I don't know. It definitely helped me. And then going deeper, if you start working with Terraform, you want to start working with modules, just repeatable, or even more repeatable and usable, scripts. So one of the things there is TerraTest. Actually getting in there and testing your code. So that's something there. If you dive into that point, and one of the other pieces there is review infrastructure costs. Yeah, that's something. I know that's probably not something for a lot of teams, but like for us, it was. I mean, we're also, like, I meet with someone every month and talk about infrastructure costs. That's one of the things I'm responsible for talking about right now. So, that's something. Yeah, that might it might be relying on your company structure and whatnot. But like I said, we're a small team, so it's just one of the things. If I'm deploying infrastructure, I have to keep track of it, and I have to tally up the costs and do these things. Scrolling down further. Hulu fans. but yeah. And then a lot of you are in the test space, you should be familiar with this. You break things, you know, it's something a lot of people talk about or they argue against. There's always someone that wants to call it something differently, which is cool. But yeah, breaking what you created with gas engineering. Yeah, I mean, just the idea of, you know, as a tester, you're looking at an application, and you know, if you're doing some exploratory test or something, yeah, you're looking for ways to break it or, you know, use it in a different way or something that was not supposed to happen, which is cool. Yeah, the same thing can be done for infrastructure. So there's a ton of tools available to accomplish the basics, and there's manual ways to do it as well. So there's, you know, I mean, ideally in like a perfect world, you know, there's like the massive companies, you know, like you have Netflix and you have the larger companies that are writing a lot. I mean, I believe it originated at Netflix or Amazon. But yeah, really, like Netflix wrote, you know, the Simian Army scripts, and you know, there's a lot of these tools have been open sourced, and there's companies around this now. Gremlin, I believe, is one of them. Really cool stuff they're doing over there, and really, like, you know, what you're doing there is something that I kind of talked about earlier was, you know, you're promising, you know, departments, the company, you know, really, like, you know, when you're deploying something, you're promising them something. You're like, okay, this will be available, you know. So with gas engineering, you can test that. You can kind of prove that case out, and you're testing the high availability. You're testing the resiliency. You know, you're testing the latency. There's a lot here, you know, and you're kind of giving yourself some peace of mind, you know, just based on what you promised. You know, just going back to that Vault example, you know, there's a Vault cluster we have right now that's several instances, and you know, the first thing I did was go in there and just turn a couple of those instances off, and then, you know, it's supported by console backend for the time being, and we went in there and turned off a couple of those instances. You know, it's a distributed system, so, you know, really what we want there is you know, is that pro of the distributed system. So we want to save some static secret, and then we want to ensure that it's still there. So that's, yeah, that's a piece of it. And then, you know, getting into this, you know, if you have existing infrastructure and applications, you know, once again, just start small. I was reading about this, and I was, you know, I was so excited. I was like, oh my goodness, this is really cool. This is something I'm kind of familiar with testing. But yeah, there's a lot of writing on it. Don't try not to get overwhelmed, you know, with all of this stuff. Start small. Do what I did. Turn off a couple instances. Ensure your data is still being stored in console, or, you know, whatever you're working on. You know, and then ultimately, you know, for ops, you know, or SRE, you know, really what we're doing here is we want to reduce being woken up. It's not great to be on call and to get that wake up call, you know, for something you're responsible for. You know, you do get that adrenaline rush. You know, it's a different, yeah, if you've ever been on a call, it's like, it's a different experience. So when I'm responsible for building this stuff out, I really want to make sure, you know, that I don't get woken up, or, you know, mostly a teammate. I don't want a teammate getting woken up for something I was, you know, responsible for. It's a terrible feeling. It's awful, you know, so it restores confidence. The monster, and then going down here, and then just a few places that you can find me. Again, just wanted to, you know, make sure if there are any questions at all, you know, I can hop into it and answer whatever, point you to the right resources if I can't. So I'm still, you know, sort of new to this stuff as well. But my GitHub is my first and last name. It's Evan Nedajadlo. And then with Twitter, it's Nedajadlo. And I'm, you know, just elsewhere online. But that covers it. If you want to dive into some questions.
Sure, Ivan. So thank you so much for this talk. And I would just request the participants, if you have any questions, then please post it. So even some of the offline questions in here. So how much of the collaboration is with the ops team?
Like between testing and operations?
Yeah, between testing and operations.
Sure. I mean, yeah, with our organization, yeah, we work really closely. I mean, once again, we're a small team, so we have like 65-ish engineers, growing, you know, and we work with multiple different companies. But yeah, I mean, really like the pieces that we work with. All right, so I guess the quick answer is we work pretty closely now, because one of the things that I wanted to do when I was, you know, more so responsible for testing and before I wanted to, you know, dive into the ops world is I wanted testing to be more involved with monitoring, observability. You know, I wanted them to be aware of, you know, when we deploy an application, I wanted them to get that instantaneous feedback, you know, as opposed to finding out from, you know, one of our customers. So that's one of the pieces there. So yeah, right now we work pretty closely together. We involve them with like observability and the monitoring, and you know, you know, they have a deeper understanding of what we use for CI/CD as well. So yeah, and they once again just, you know, really are involved with the release pipelines. You know, understanding where a performance test goes, or like, you know, more end-to-end tests. You know, and understanding like and having metrics on, you know, how long a CI/CD pipeline, how long a release should be. You know, how long does it take us to get something out to production? So that's something there. But yeah, right now our team is working closely together because we're involving test more, and I kind of see that like happening at a lot of organizations in the future as well. I know there's like I'm in Austin, Texas right now, so like there's a local organization. They're like a bigger company. It was like I think it was Homeway at the time. I think they rebranded into another name, but yeah, met some really cool people there. There's some really cool people that helped me with my career, just educating me on stuff and helping me out. You know, and one of the takeaways that I got from them was they were like heavily involving their testings and these observability efforts. You know, that was some of the team members. That was like kind of all they were doing was just kind of responding to these. So it's, in a sense, they were becoming ops SRE, you know, type people. So that yeah, I thought that was interesting. But this differs. You know, like there's larger companies where, you know, you will only do testing, or you only write automated tests and do these kinds of things, or you only work in ops, etc. So yeah, it really just depends on where you are. But yeah, I mean, yeah, my takeaway is like a lot of local companies here and you know, various organizations, they're starting to involve the testing more heavily with any ops people. Yeah.
Right, Ivan. Sure, Ivan. So that was a really good one on SRE. So just for the audiences, so tomorrow again there are a lot of good talks coming up on test data management, and then we have on robot framework and stuff. So yeah, so that is for tomorrow. But yeah, for today, Ivan, I can just see another question coming up here. I like your don't follow the herd mentality. Can you summarize your philosophy on this? So this is by this stuff. So right.
Oh, like the basically what everybody is using, these kinds of things. Yeah, I mean, for me, it just goes back to that like context driven testing and that kind of like mentality. I have, you know, I have so many people that I meet through the meetup, and yeah, I mean, basically I just hear about really cool stuff they're working on. You know, there's of course the Google SRE book, and you know, so many other books, but I think particularly it's like that Google SRE book. You know, I'm reading through it, and there's just a lot of information there, and you know, at the end of the day, it works for them. It works really well for them. You know, they have these huge teams and they built out these processes for that reason. You know, and for me to like condense that into my current organization, it would be asking too much. Not only for myself, but the teammates that I work with. It's a lot to implement. It doesn't fit our use case. It doesn't fit our culture. It doesn't fit our organization. So that's really like I probably one of the biggest takeaways there, because for a while I was like, you know, kind of going nuts. I was just like, you know, following all of these people and reading a ton of these books and just getting like, I was kind of upset with myself. I was like, we're not doing this, you know, okay. You know, I am a failure, which, you know, it's not the case for anyone. You know, it's just, what you, what you want to implement, what will work at your organization. So, just because a larger organization is doing something huge, it doesn't mean it's gonna work for your team or your organization. It's one of those things. And there's really cool people that, they post all day on Twitter about really cool stuff they're working on. I know I mentioned
Right.
Rust. It's one of those things. And
Right.
yeah, it's awesome. There's some pros there, and a lot of really, really cool aspects to that, the safety and all these other syntactical sugar. But yeah, at the end of the day, just use what works for your team. And you as an individual, if you see something that's really cool, like right now for myself, I'm really interested in serverless, and I think it's really neat. And as a result of that, that's something I do on my own if I have the time in my spare time. But yeah, also make time to relax. But yeah, that's my takeaway on that.
Yeah, Ivan, thank you so much. For this session, and it was great having you here. So last year also we met you in Austin. This time it was much virtual, but this was a really a great talk. Thank you so much,
Awesome.
and definitely we'll get back to any questions over the LinkedIn if we have any. Sure.
Definitely. Yeah. Thank you, everyone. I'm gonna
Absolutely.
get back to work now.
Right. So just
Bye.
bye bye.